Welcome back, everyone. We all have had a chance to practice undergraduate writing level, as well as improving the skills of effective communication in presentation and professional settings. This specific session is dedicated to the graduate writing overviews. Moving forward, graduate students need to learn how to communicate in a completely different level. When it is undergraduate level, the students can communicate and they write their papers basically to their professors. As for the graduate students, they need to write down their papers to journals at the conferences, and the level of their writing should be well versed in the scholarly conversation level. So there are different styles in the context. If I want to explain, it is helpful if you think as a writing as a conversation, as a process, as a social endeavor, or the disciplinary undertaking. We will assess and analyze each of them in this session, so you can pause and add your comment in the box below. Writing at the graduate level, as I mentioned earlier, the level should be somehow higher than the undergraduates because the audience is different. The audience is not the professor anymore, is the public, basically. So where undergraduate writers may find themselves primarily writing for the professor as the audience, master level or PhD level students, they need to have the higher subject matter in terms of the purpose and the audience when it comes to writing in journals or for the presentation. The materials that the graduate students need to access and they need to analyze, those materials are covered with a cover of the range of the topics that are relevant in the graduate level. The process of becoming a scholarly writer within a particular field should be analyzed as well. There are two sets of the vidcasts that we will analyze in this session, and both of them will review the steps that you need to take. We're going to start with the introductory level of mm, graduate writing vidcast series. As it sounds, when you're writing in conversation or as conversation in graduate level, people usually use the regular terms or words that they refer to the documents or how they created the documents. They put the words together, they create sentences, paragraphs, and the essays accordingly. However, when you generate the graduate level communication, even in the conversation style with an audience, you might think of your writing that you're communicating with the audience in a regular way. It is specifically true and accepted that the writing that faculty and other scholars do, you need to have enough research background somehow. As emerging scholars, graduate writers will want to view writing as the opportunity to participate in the ongoing dialogues in between, and writers within the graduate level will be asked to make and defend their argument. So enough supporting documents and pieces of evidence will be recognized as a must to claim your point and to avoid biases or fallacies. Remember one important element, that successful authors in the graduate level, they, even though that they're having the conversational style in their writing, their knowledge of documentation vocabulary level should be given in a proper style.
This series will include video.
We're going to watch this video together to learn how the conversation style of the graduate will happen.
Throughout this video, we will be framing writing as a conversation. Thinking about writing in this way helps us to recognize how the existing published work in your academic discipline or field allows scholars to engage or talk with one another. Academic discourse allows scholars to respond to each other's arguments, address and shape publishing trends, and move the conversation forward by offering new or nuanced insight into a topic. As with any other type of conversation, academic dialogues play by a specific set of rules in terms of what is considered appropriate for each discipline or field. To unpack this idea of conversational rules, let's think about how you might shape different personal conversations in your everyday life. For example, imagine how you would describe your weekend activities to your best friend. Next, think about explaining that same information to a respected elder in your family. Finally, how would you respond to one of your advisors or professors if they asked you about your weekend? Even though these three conversations engage with the same subject matter, how would you navigate those discussions differently based on your conversation partner? For example, how might your vocabulary change? How would you address the structure or organization of your story? Would you change the main focus or content of your story altogether, depending on your conversation partner? What assumptions about existing shared knowledge could you make, depending on who you're talking to? We make these kind of conversational decisions every time we talk to someone. The goal of this video then is to help you feel more prepared to translate these skills that you already possess into your own academic writing. Whether you are writing a seminar paper, a journal article, or a chapter for your thesis or dissertation, you are entering a scholarly conversation governed by your field's discipline specific rules for a particular type of writing. These rules, or genre conventions, establish the norms and standards of a writing project. Keep in mind that these norms and expectations shift over time. With that said, this is a friendly reminder to check out our other videos in this series for new graduate student writers, especially if you would like to learn more about how writing is disciplinary and how discipline specific writing expectations shape genre conventions in your field. Let's continue to break down this idea of genre conventions. Remember, these shift over time, and they establish expectations around things like argument structure and execution, and they establish the expected citation format and the level of hedging for a particular type of writing. Discipline specific genre conventions also help shape sentence level factors like vocabulary, idiom usage, and whether active or passive voice is appropriate for a particular type of writing. The hope of this video is to help you figure out how you can better understand your field's existing scholarly conversation and genre conventions so that you can enter that conversation with success. The previous slides went through quite a bit of information, so let's take a few moments to pause and reflect. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to set a timer for 10 minutes and to journal about your current understanding of your field's scholarly conversation. There are a couple of ways you can approach this reflection time, and if you don't have all of the answers now, do not fret. If you don't feel confident answering any of these prompts, find someone who can help you. After this slide, we'll talk more about resources and next steps. For now, though, let's pause here and set a 10-minute timer. What do you know about your field's scholarly expectations? What do you know about the document level, paragraph level, and sentence level writing expectations in your field? For example, what citation style are you expected to use? How are journal articles in your field usually structured? You can also reflect on your field more broadly here if that's helpful to you. Who are some of the foundational voices in the existing published conversation? Who are some of the more recent writers who have continued to shape your field and who inspire your work? How have those more recent writers gone about challenging or building upon older arguments? How do scholars in your field organize their arguments altogether? If you're unsure about any of these questions, again, that's okay. Make a list of questions you have and make a plan to talk to your advisor, your course professors, or your colleagues about them. When you're ready, set your timer and start journaling. We'll continue in a moment. Welcome back. Now that we've taken some time to reflect on what you already know about your field's ongoing scholarly conversation and what questions you still have, let's talk about ways to actually locate that conversation that you're going to enter as a graduate student writer. This is an opportunity to talk to your advisor, meet up with fellow students in your program who are at least a few semesters ahead of you, and to comb through your course syllabi. Reading through seminar syllabi can help you get a sense of major journals in your field, and it can also help you to find other sources to engage with. It's worth noting here that finding these resources can provide you with a bibliography that you can use to find other texts involved with and considered important to a particular scholarly conversation. Once you find a reputable article, for example, check out the sources listed in that text reference list. This strategy, sometimes called source mining or data mining, helps you to trace a scholarly conversation as you dig through reference lists. Techniques like these can help you to more easily and more thoroughly engage with scholarly dialogues. As you navigate through scholarly conversations, it's important to consider the caliber of your sources. Many of us have probably heard of peer reviewed sources before, but what does this actually mean? The peer review process is a rigorous process within academic publishing that aims to elevate the integrity, credibility, and quality of published works within a field. Peer review sources have been vetted by a group of experts within a particular field, and this means that a peer reviewed source has been assessed not only by an editor, but also by a panel of anonymous reviewers made up of esteemed scholars within a particular discipline. This process is meant to allow scholars to self regulate and maintain a high standard of work. If you're looking to better understand the existing scholarly conversation within your field, finding peer reviewed sources is a way to ensure that a particular text is credible. If you need help finding peer reviewed works, or if you are struggling to find reputable works that relate to your own research interests, libraries often have features to help you get started. If you are a Purdue student, for example, one of the best ways to locate an existing scholarly conversation is to use the Ask a Librarian chat feature that is available on our library page, or to schedule a consultation with a reference librarian. If you're viewing this video from a different institution, check out the resources available to you through your university. Once you've found a few journal articles, you might also consider checking out free online resources provided by the Purdue OWL or Online Writing Lab to learn more about tools like reverse outlining or genre analysis. These tools are great ways to make sense of the different components that make up a published work so that you can more easily produce those components in your own academic writing. This is a moment to recognize that writing is a process. We'll talk more about this in a future video for this new graduate student writer series. But for now, keep in mind that locating and working with academic sources plays a large part of that process. Even when you're not actively accumulating words on the page, you are engaging with the writing process each time you work with your sources. Now that we've talked a bit about locating the scholarly conversation, let's talk briefly about keeping all of this information organized. One of the most helpful things you can do for yourself as a new graduate student is to keep track of your sources now. Down the road, when you're preparing your preliminary exams or prospectus or even a regular seminar paper, you can save yourself a lot of headaches by keeping track of your sources. Citation managers like Zotero or EndNote help you to generate proper citations for your sources. And even more helpful, they allow you to keep track of the different texts you're engaging with throughout your coursework. As you start to keep track of your sources, you might find that you are engaging with the same source across multiple occasions, course discussions, research projects, and so on. Here we can start to think about how texts move through scholarly dialogues and serve the conversation differently depending on how you choose to use that text. Citation managers also often allow you to annotate your sources so that you can look back on a particular source later and have notes to remember the main argument and significance of that text. Creating an annotation that's even just 3 or 4 quick sentences can help make a huge difference down the road when you're trying to reflect back on a collection of research. Annotations should be brief and they should offer a clear overview of the text's main argument or contribution to a scholarly conversation. You might also use your annotations to assess how a particular source relates to other texts in your bibliography. For those of you affiliated with Purdue, our library has LibGuides or library guides dedicated to helping you navigate different citation managers. Additionally, the Purdue Writing Lab consults with Purdue writers about citation usage and management all the time, so reach out to us. Play around and see what works best for you. Again, if you're feeling lost, reach out to a librarian or schedule an appointment at your local writing center. What resources are available to you through your university or community? We have covered a lot of information so far, so let's slow things down a bit and go over some general do's and don'ts about how to enter a scholarly conversation. First, do seek feedback from multiple outside readers. This is a friendly reminder to those of you at Purdue that the Writing Lab is here to help writers of all levels. Strong writers benefit from working with the lab too. Next, use proper citations. Although citation guidelines will shift over time, it's helpful to establish a base of understanding sooner rather than later. If you need help, try exploring Zotero or EndNote. It's also essential to synthesize information and draw connections between your sources. To successfully enter a scholarly conversation, you need to enter with an actual understanding of the existing conversation. It's crucial here to showcase your comprehension and retention of key concepts, but you won't just be repeating what everyone else has already said. Remember that having a conversation with someone involves listening to and soliciting information from someone, of course, but it also involves you contributing something to the dialogue as well. If you are not contributing to a discussion, that exchange becomes more of a lecture than a conversation. Look for gaps or limitations or lingering questions in the existing conversation and attempt to address those gaps in your own work. It's also appropriate to posit critiques and ask critical questions in your work. After all, points of dissent are what move academic conversations forward. As for things to avoid in your academic writing, resist the urge to be overly formal or casual in your work. Again, explore the existing conversation to get a sense of appropriate tone, word choice, and phrasing patterns. Next, avoid generalizations or making sweeping statements in your work. Instead, be specific in your writing and stay within the scope of your project. You won't be demonstrating everything you know in any particular piece of writing. Our next point here might feel obvious, but it's one we still need to talk about. As you enter a scholarly conversation, do not plagiarize. Present work that is your own. And when you use outside sources to back up or support your claims, be sure to offer proper citations. Like plagiarism, we also want to avoid writing that paraphrases too closely to the original source material. This is sometimes called patch writing. When a writer relies heavily on paraphrasing or patch writing, they often need to revisit the source material and strengthen their comprehension of that material. If you need help integrating your sources in your written work, consider exploring the Purdue Online Writing Lab or OWL's discussion of quoting, summarizing, and paraphrasing sources. If you're a student, staff member, or faculty member of Purdue's main campus, you can also come chat with a tutor in the writing lab or check out our free workshops that cover a series of topics like how to use citation managers and how to integrate sources into your work. If you are affiliated with our main campus, come visit us. We are here to help you. If you are working at a different institution, check out the resources available to you through your campus. And you're always welcome to check out our free materials through the Purdue OWL as well as through our YouTube channel. Thank you all for joining me today. I hope this video helps to give you a better understanding of how writing is a scholarly conversation.
Now, we all have learned how to write in conversation in graduate paper. This is a part one of the professional communication. Welcome to Effective Communication Channel. I am Maria Mahmoudian, and I'm a professor of communication, business communication at the University of Toronto. Follow for part two and part three.